Friends, today we will be talking about meat and antibiotic resistance. As you all know, antibiotic resistance is one of the important areas which is being discussed by scientists as well as common man. We'll try to understand the basics of what are antibiotics, what is it that causes resistance, and more importantly, we'll try to understand how antibiotics are being used in food animals and what is its role in meat. Antimicrobial agents or antibiotics are essential drugs for treatment of infectious diseases, both for humans as well as animals. Antibiotics are a subclass of antimicrobial agents that are active only against bacteria. They can either be naturally derived from bacteria or molds, or they can also be produced synthetically. Now we'll try to understand what exactly is antimicrobial resistance and what are the key issues with this resistance development. Antimicrobial resistance or AMR is the development and spread of resistance to these agents by bacteria following their use and misuse. So resistance actually takes place in the microorganisms. That is, microorganisms are developing resistance to the drugs which are being used. Many people have a feeling that the resistance are being developed by human beings. That is not the case. Now this is a natural phenomenon. We usually find this naturally whenever any drug or a chemical is being used on bacteria. So bacteria has evolved to that extent that they are outsmarting human beings, in the sense that the moment you are producing a drug against bacteria, you can be 100% sure that the bacteria has its own mechanism to see to it that it is able to evade that drug. Now this is the basis of what is you call it as the antimicrobial resistance in bacteria. Now emergence of resistance to antibiotics, as I said, is a natural phenomenon and occurs whenever antibiotics are used. So this could be the resistance being developed in human beings by use of these antimicrobials in human medicine. It could be through treatment of diseases in animals, or it could be through the environment also. That is, the industry which is producing the antibiotics, if it is displacing this as in the form of effluents, there also you can think of this development of antimicrobial resistance. Now the emergence of resistance to antibiotics is quite natural and results from the ability of the bacteria to withstand the attack by antibiotics, which can develop either through mutation or by acquiring resistant genes from other bacteria they are already resistant. So here also you can see that the bacteria has got a very important role. Unlike the human beings, they always share. Human beings are always averse to sharing, whereas bacteria always share whatever they have with their fellow beings. So that is why I say bacteria has evolved much faster in that aspect. We also need to understand that antimicrobial resistance, which is formed in bacteria, is thus developing into a very crucial public health as well as an animal health concern, which is influenced by the use of antimicrobial agents in human beings, in animals, or as I said, elsewhere. And the availability and use of these antimicrobial drugs in terrestrial and aquatic animals and in crop production also is very essential to ensure the health and productivity. So it is not that you don't need antibiotics. Antibiotics are important in production. It contributes to food security, food safety, and also animal welfare, and in turn to protection of livelihood and sustainability of animal and crop production. However, there is a growing global concern about the resistance to this antimicrobial drugs, including antibiotics, amidst the fears that this AMR will reverse whatever gains we have achieved. In human beings also, antimicrobial resistance is also now threatening to undo the decades of improvements which has been made in human healthcare outcomes, with direct impact on the ability of people to live their full life and productive lives. The emergence of this AMR also threatens our ability to fight human as well as animal diseases with potentially very serious public health implications. This could also narrow down the line of defense which we have against bacterial infections to only a very few antibiotics, because the rest of the antibiotics are going to be of no use in fighting this bacteria. This could very drastically increase the human healthcare costs. Now let us look at what are the main drivers of antibiotic resistance. All said and done, the most important driver is the use of antibiotic itself. So this use could be a misuse in the form of overuse or underuse. The second driver is the transmission and spread of the already resistant bacterial strains or genes that carry the information on resistance. So these are principally the two drivers which are driving the antimicrobial resistance in the environment. One could be the use of antibiotics, maybe the misuse of it, and the second one is transfer or transmission of the bacteria containing this antimicrobial genes or the resistance genes to other organisms. Now, is this resistance to antibiotic a very important food safety problem? If you look at it, antibiotics are used in food animals, not only for treatment, but also for sometimes disease prevention and growth promotion. And antimicrobial use in animals contributes to resistance problems in human health. For example, the foodborne infections which are caused by resistant bacteria like Salmonella and Campylobacter species pose a very particular risk to human beings because of possible treatment failures. Resistant commensal bacteria like, for example, the Escherichia coli and the Enterococcus species, these could also pose a risk to human health, as these can carry resistance genes and which is further transferred to human pathogens. So as such, these are innocuous organisms, but these innocuous organisms could also carry the resistant genes, and these genes can further be transferred to the human pathogens. So as a result of the use of antibiotics, food can contain antibiotic resistant bacteria as well as the antibiotic resistant genes. Now this is an important public health issue, because as a consequence of this, foodborne disease causing bacteria as well as resistant genes can be passed on to human beings through the food chain. Resistance to Salmonella and Campylobacter species is clearly linked to antibiotic use in food animals, and foodborne diseases in human beings caused by such resistant bacteria are well documented. Now it is not only that case, like now whatever bacteria you take would have developed resistance against many of the antibiotics which are currently in use. There are also concerns among the consumers that there are chances of consumption of antibiotics through meat, because in many of this media it has been reported that you take meat, you take chicken, you are consuming antibiotics with that. Now, whenever veterinarians are prescribing antibiotics to food animals, they always insist on what is called as the withdrawal period before the animal is being used as food. Now, what is the purpose of this withdrawal period? This is to allow the time for complete removal of the antibiotic from the animal system before the animal is being used as food, so that the chances of consumption of antibiotics through foods is a rarity. Because whenever the animals are given antibiotics as treatment, the antibiotic gets into the system, it gets metabolized in the liver, and then probably it is the residue of these antibiotics which might find its way in the meat of the animal. So that is why you don't find the antibiotic as such in the meat. Maybe the residual content of those antibiotics would be present in the meat. But the issue is not this. Improper use of antibiotics could lead to resistance in the bacteria which is present in the animals. And when this bacteria develop the resistance, when do these bacteria develop these resistance? They develop resistance when they are being continuously exposed to an improper dosage and time of the antibiotics. So resistance bacteria which develop could be passed on to human beings through food, including meat. So this is the issue which is of more importance rather than the fear which is there that the consumption of antibiotic as such by the human beings. So if resistance bacteria is passed on to human beings through foods, including meat, then that causes the problem in human beings, because the rest of the microorganisms inside the gut in human beings could also develop the resistance. Now food, if it is handled properly and if it is cooked properly, so proper cooking of the food will ensure that most of these pathogens are killed, and at the same time it will ensure that the resistance organisms are not there in the food, so that it doesn't enter the human chain. So under the Indian conditions of proper cooking, wherein we usually cook the foods, this usually is not a problem. Now, how do we tackle this antimicrobial resistance from a food safety perspective? Preventing and controlling antibiotic resistance is a very complex issue which involves many sectors and requires a comprehensive approach and cooperation. Animal producers, veterinarians, and food safety authorities, together with other stakeholders, have a very important role in preserving the power of antibiotics at the origin of the food chain. And how do they achieve this? It is by preventing the development and spread of antibiotic resistance through prudent use of antibiotic in food animals. We also need to reduce the need of antibiotics by preventing infections, by improving the hygiene in the farm, and also incorporating the infection control. Farmers, veterinarians, and the veterinary and food safety authorities have got a very important role to play in this. And they can help to preserve the power of antibiotics at the very origin of the food chain. The use of antibiotics has to be balanced, meaning they should be used only when they are needed and only when they are justified for pure therapeutic reasons and not otherwise. These have to be underlined. Use of antibiotics only when they are needed and only when justified for pure therapeutic reasons. Now, what could be the advice which can be given to the farmers or producers of food animals with regard to prudent use of antibiotics? They are not supposed to use antibiotics as promoters of animal growth, because that is not the intention of using antibiotics. Administration of antibiotics to food animals only when prescribed by veterinarian and in the right dose and for the right treatment duration. Reduce the need of antibiotics in animal husbandry by improving the animal health. Now, this could be done by enhancing the biosecurity in the farms, biosafety in the farms, through good hygienic practices and management practices, and also through good infection control measures, including the use of vaccines wherever possible. The farmers also need to be informed and updated on the guidelines on the prudent use of antibiotics to reduce the use and misuse in food animals. Now, the advice to the food safety and veterinary authorities would be to eliminate the use of antibiotics as growth promoters where it still occurs, require that the antibiotics be available only for food animals, only on the prescription of veterinarian, otherwise it should not be used, and take part in developing and implementing intersectoral strategies on antibiotic resistance, including food safety perspectives, and in promoting the prudent use of antibiotics in all sectors. We also need to ensure collaboration and communication with public health authorities in addressing this problem, and also develop national guidelines to reduce the use and misuse of antibiotics in food animals and provide training to farmers and food animal producers to ensure their implementation. In India, it has been the role of this Food Safety and Standards Authority of India to have the regulations concerning this, and wherein it has been prescribed that the vets and animal owners will have to guarantee that the animal products they produce are drug free before they can be used as food. This is a very crucial regulation which has come up, and the new regulations would also mean that implementation of drug withdrawal periods are implemented before the animal is being used as food. This withdrawal period is very crucial because it allows time, as I said before, for the drugs to completely leave the animal system. As per the Food Safety and Standards, Contaminants, Toxins and Residues Amendment Regulations 2019, a very critical drug, colistin, which is of very importance in human medicine, has been added to the list of antibiotics and veterinary drugs that are prohibited for use in processing of meat and meat products, poultry and eggs, seafoods including shrimps, prawn or fish and fisheries products. So colistin is a valuable last resort antibiotic, and because of its rampant use, patients have started exhibiting resistance to the drug. So that is with regard to colistin, which was previously used as a growth promoter in many of the feeds. So that has been completely banned off now. Now, India has got a national action plan on antimicrobial resistance, and this India's national action plan was released in 2017 by the Union Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, and the objectives include providing awareness programs, enhancing surveillance, strengthening infection prevention and control measures, research and development, promoting investments and collaborative activities to control AMR. Now, on the basis of National Action Plan, various states have begun the process of initiating their state action plans for control of antimicrobial resistance. And Kerala was the first state to come out with a comprehensive state action plan incorporating the One Health approach. And this has been titled as the Kerala Antimicrobial Resistance Strategic Action Plan, or KARSAP, in the year 2018. So to conclude, the prudent use of antibiotics should be of prime importance in food animals, coupled with ensuring hygiene in the farm and processing areas in meat and meat products. And this will go a long way in addressing the issues with regard to AMR in food and food animals. It is not an easy task because it has to be implemented at grassroots levels. Thank you very much.